Hey everybody, in the last video we talked about how to create your own drum rack to use in live performance with Simpler in Ableton. In this video we're going to use that drum rack with live looping and step sequencing in Ableton. So let's get going. So here's my Ableton session. On my first track here, these are my, this is the drum rack we made in the last video. Down here, this is your record enable button. So you just want to make sure that is turned on, and that allows you to hear your drums. So that's here's what they sound like. So there are my drums. I've continued to work on them between the last video and this one. Whenever you're live looping, if it has a beat or a rhythm or a groove, you're definitely going to want to use a metronome. And so up here, this is your metronome. Right now this is turned on. So if I start my timeline, you can do that by hitting the space bar. Or you can hit play. Both things do the same thing essentially. That's how you turn your metronome on. Also, if you click the drop down thing here, you can get a count in if you want one. You can change the metronome sound, and you can also change the subdivision on your metronome. Right now I have it doing 8th notes, and we are at 100 beats per minute. So you can adjust that too if you'd like. So right now you can hear the metronome. Obviously, if you're performing live loops, you don't want your audience to hear the metronome. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my cue out right here to 3 and 4. So now I'm going to start the metronome, but you shouldn't be able to hear it. I can hear this in my headphones, and that's what you're going to want when you're doing live performance. You don't want your audience to be hearing the metronome. Of course, you also need to make sure your routing settings are correct on your interface to send you channels 3 and 4 through your headphones. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a blank clip to record in. So I want to go to my prep drums track and make sure it's record enabled. And now if I click this circle here, it's going to make a clip for me. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so now I have a 2-bar loop that is being cycled through. I'm going to go here to my session record button, and by clicking that, you'll notice that my arrow here has turned red from green. Again, there's green, there's red. So when it's red, that means anything that I play is going to be recorded into my clip. So let's record a beat. All right, and so there is a loop. Now you'll notice that there are some small rhythmic imperfections. One thing you can do, a really cool feature with Ableton, is, let me delete what I just created. I'm going to click inside the clip, then hit Command A to select all, then hit backspace. What I can do is go to Edit up here, top of my screen, go to Record Quantize, and then I'm going to select my lowest subdivision, which is straight 8th notes. So here's 8th note quantization. All right, so now I'm going to get my clip going again. I'm going to turn on session record. Now you can see the loop going, and I'm going to record a beat. The first time there might be some rhythmic imperfections, and then it should be corrected on the second time. Ready, and. All right, so there is my loop that has been corrected on the second time. Now I can also layer things in instead of recording them all at once. So let me show you that. I'll record it again, one thing at a time. And I'm going to start with the hi-hat. 1, 2, ready, and. Here's kick. Snare. Another thing I can do is I can pencil in notes. So I'll pencil in a crash cymbal to show you that. Alright, so now that we have all this MIDI data recorded, there's a lot of other fun things we can do with it. So let's say maybe I don't want a straight rock feel anymore, but I want a shuffle. I don't have to re-record. I can simply use some quantization settings. So let me hit play. Bring the volume down so you can hear me talk. So I'm going to select all of my MIDI data. I'm going to right click it. I'm going to go to Quantize settings. And instead of straight eighth notes, which is what we currently were, I'm going to select eighth note triplet. It's currently going to adjust the start and the ends of each one of my pieces of MIDI data to go to an eighth note triplet grid, and I'm asking it to quantize it 100%, so it's going to be perfectly locked into the eighth note triplet grid. You can preserve some of your imperfection and performance by just changing this, bringing it down a little bit. So we're going to hit apply, and there is my shuffle. I can also do a bunch of stuff down here. I can reverse my data. I can invert my data. I can slow my data down. I can speed it up by half, and I can keep going. Another fun thing I can do is I can just take the data and I can copy it into a new MIDI track, and I can have any instrument I want play that exact same data. It's just data, so you can make any instrument do it. So why not? Let's use that. There we go. Let's hit play now. Something else you can do in your clip controls is control envelopes. So again, to get there, I'm going to double click my clip. So that has opened up my clip settings. And you click this tab here, that'll take you to the envelopes. And in this drop down, there's all kinds of ways that we can manipulate the sound of what we're doing. So I'm going to click this drop down. So in my envelopes, I can control MIDI controls. So here's all my MIDI controls that I can control. I can also control effects and different things about each individual sample, whether that's my crash, my hi-hat, my snare, my kick. Also, I can control any effects that I have put onto my individual samples or effects that I have put on the track overall. So lots of stuff you can do. The thing I wanted to share with you, the example I want to give, is if you go to mixer settings and you go to your drop down for mixer settings. So now I have a bunch of stuff I can control. I can control the speaker on or off, or the mute button. So I'm going to hit play. So by adjusting that, now I've turned the sound off. By putting it back up, now it's back on. So that's the speaker on off button, and then I can adjust all my return tracks. So if you create more return tracks, that will adjust the effect that you have on that return track. So let me hit play on that. Yep, so then you could hear the reverb was coming in. And the one that I use a lot is track volume. So what I like to do oftentimes, because usually if I have any type of rhythmic error in my performance, it usually happens in the first couple beats. What I do is I start my loop with a fade in. So I'm going to have a fade in from all the way down on my fader up to 0 decibels, the volume it's currently set, or that I want it to end at. And then I'm going to adjust my loop length to be 1 bar. And then I'm going to adjust the starting point of that loop to be a bar earlier. So now the loop is going to start here, it's going to play. Then when it gets to this point, this is where it's going to loop. And so all of these envelopes, you can preset them in your clips. And then when you go and you record your loops, they'll already be there. So what I'm going to do now, I've made that envelope. I'm going to click back here so I can adjust the MIDI notes. So I'm going to select all, I'm going to delete it. All right, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-record a loop so you can hear how that envelope has affected my clip. So let me get the metronome going. There we go. Go back, check out my envelope, and there it is. Just opened up the envelope tab, and the red dot next to whatever you've adjusted indicates that there's an envelope on there or an automation on there. So if there's nothing beside it, then that means there's nothing there. Yeah, so that's a really handy thing to use as envelopes on your clips. And as I mentioned, I use the fade in oftentimes when I'm setting loops, so it just gives me a second to kind of find my groove and eliminate as many imperfections as possible. Also, adjusting the starting point of the clip really helps for that purpose as well. And it can be used in a variety of other ways too. And of course, you can do this with any envelope that's over there. And you preset it in your clip, and then it shows up when you loop stuff. So when it comes to live looping in performance, follow actions in Ableton really help you be efficient with creating your loops. So to demonstrate that, we're going to take this blank clip we've already created. I'm just going to duplicate it by clicking Command D. So now I have essentially 2 scenes worth of clips on my prepped drums track. So this is a scene, this entire row here, and this is a scene here as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-program some follow actions. So I'm going to take this first clip and I'm going to click down here in my clip controls follow action, and then I'm going to have the loop go through 2 times, and then I want 100% chance, so you can kind of make it more randomized, but I want 100% chance that that first clip is going to go to the next clip after it plays through twice. And then I'm going to click the next clip, and I'm going to turn the follow action on for that one too, and I'm going to have it also play through 2 times, and I am going to set 100% chance that it is going to go back to the previous clip after 2 times playing through. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn a count on in, I'm going to turn a 2-bar count on in, and I am going to try to create a cycle and 2 sections of loops. Back. And now it's going to go back to the next one that I recorded. You can also create follow actions on your master track. So if you have multiple tracks with clips, then each row of clips, so here is a row right here, these top 2, each row of clips is a scene, and so you just kind of follow it across, and then there's my scene, there's my first scene on the master track. And by hitting play here, that turns everything on at once, or everything in that scene. And so by clicking my master track, and then the scene that I want, now I have an option to turn follow actions on, which I've already done. So I've turned the follow action on, and I want 100% chance that it's going to go to the next scene after 4 bars. So that's what that is, bars, beats, subdivisions. So let's see if it works. And on my second scene, I've clicked that. I've already turned the follow action on, and there's a 100% chance it's going to go to the previous scene after 4 bars. So let's try it. Flashing, getting ready to go. 3rd bar. Yeah, so that's just going to loop over and over and over again forever because I've told it to go back and forth between those 2. Something else you can do is if you open up your master track by clicking and dragging, notice that some other settings have become available here. You can actually set tempos or tempi on each scene, and you can select meters. So what I've done to demonstrate this for you, I've got 100 beats per minute. I left both of them at 4/4, but you can change that to whatever meter you want. And I decided to do a little metric modulation. So the 8th note is going to stay the same, but the beat is going to open up to feel more like it's in like a compound meter. So let's listen to what that sounds like. And I've turned the metronome on so you can kind of hear that transition. So here we go. All right, and so that's how follow actions work. It's a really handy tool, and of course you can make it be as complex, and you can have as many of them as you want depending on your version of Live that you're working with. Okay, so before we get to my demo performance using live looping, I just want to talk about one last concept that I think is really useful for Ableton in general, but particularly for live looping, and that's MIDI mapping. To MIDI map, you can get there by just clicking Command M. You can also do that in the top right of your screen here. Just click MIDI. They both do the same thing. So I'm going to hit Command M. There we go. And so let's say I want this button here to turn on or record enable my next track. So I'm going to just select what I want and then click the button. And let's say I want this fader to be operated by this fader on my MIDI device. So now I'm done mapping, Command M. So if I hit this button, I now have turned on the second track. That turns it off, on. And then also if I move this fader around, it's now controlling the fader I'd set it to control. You can also set parameters. So if I go back into the MIDI mapping, this right here, right now it's set to 6 decibels as the maximum. That's usually higher than you want, so I usually will pull that down to 0 decibels. But like if you want there to be a higher minimum, you could do that too. So let's set it to -11 just to check that out. So now when I go all the way down, it goes to -11. When I go all the way up, it goes to 0. This is helpful just because it makes it less likely that you'll make a unwanted mistake in live performance. So that's just a little bit about MIDI mapping. Alright, so the last thing I'd like to share with you is how you can use the drum rack we built in the previous video and step sequence it using the Ableton Push, which is a really fabulous device. So first of all, you can perform the drum rack just as like we were doing on the other MIDI device. So there are our sounds. You can essentially perform your drum rack on any MIDI device, whichever one you prefer. The Ableton Push is fantastic for this purpose. In particular, I want to share with you how to do the step sequencing. So I've got a blank clip here in Ableton. I want to hit play on that clip, and now you can see this green light that's going through. And essentially what that is a 16th note grid for 2 bars. So 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, bar 2, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. This light here is showing you bar 1, and then that's bar 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable session record. So now you saw that the light turned red. I'm going to select kick up there at the top, and now I'm going to start inputting data within a 16th note grid. Good. So there is my kick for getting started. Let's now add snare. I want one more kick note in there. And then let me get the hi-hat. I want everything. All right, and so there is, again, how you can use your drum rack and step sequence it using the Ableton Push. All right, so I hope you found this helpful, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.